This week on ANN, the Seventh-day Adventist Church offers condolences to Paris in light of recent terrorist attacks.
Thousands of youth receive spiritual renewal during Australia's largest Pathfinder Camporee.
And thousands of students in Kenya are encouraged to be used by God to make a difference.
These stories and more are coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, in response to last week's terrorist attack on the headquarters of a satirical magazine, the Seventh-day Adventist Church sent condolences to France and praised its government for supporting religious freedom. John Grotz, director of the denomination's Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department, sent the following statement in a letter. Grotz said, "On behalf of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church and its president, allow me to convey to you our deepest sympathy in connection with the terrorist attack on the Charlie Hebdo office in Paris on January 7. The letter went on to say, "We join in the pain of victims' families. We pray for them and for those who were seriously injured." To read more, visit news.adventist.org.
Thousands of youth from the church's South Pacific region made commitments to strengthen their relationship with Christ during the largest Pathfinder Camporee in Australia's history. More than 8,000 Pathfinders last week attended the I Thirst Camporee on the Toowoomba campgrounds. The Camporee featured musical and drama performances, physical activities, and sermons. By the end of the Camporee, more than 1,400 Pathfinders asked for Bible studies, and 456 young people requested to be baptized at their home churches. Nearly 1,600 Pathfinders also indicated that they wanted to connect or reconnect with God, and more than 2,200 Pathfinders said they are ready to make a difference through service.
Thousands of young people were recently inspired to make a difference at a youth congress and student retreat in the church's East Central Africa region. The Turning the World Upside Down conference took place at the University of Eastern Africa in the nation of Kenya. The keynote address was given by former Adventist Youth Ministries Director Baraka Muganda, who is currently the Vice President for Spiritual Life at Washington Adventist University in the U.S. state of Maryland. Muganda encouraged attendees to use Daniel as an example to aim for excellence in their academics, relationships, and spiritual lives. Organizers said participants gained a renewed desire to serve others and strengthen their relationships with God.
A few weeks after being hit by Typhoon Ruby, the Philippines was hit by yet another typhoon. Although Typhoon Jangmi was weaker than Ruby, it caused more deaths. The storm battered the eastern Visayas Islands and northern Mindanao, where it killed 56 people, injured 41, and left 8 missing. Jangmi's winds reached up to 80 kilometers per hour or 50 miles per hour. Volunteers from the Adventist Development and Relief Agency joined in response efforts by providing 500 relief kits on New Year's Day.
More than 1.5 million listeners in the United Kingdom had the opportunity to hear an Adventist church service earlier this week on a prominent radio station. The BBC4 Sunday Worship radio broadcast featured a special program from the Croydon Seventh-day Adventist Church in London. This was the first time in more than 20 years that an Adventist service has been featured in the weekly program. According to Neil Nunch, a Radio 4 announcer and member of Croydon, the church was asked to represent Adventism to an audience who was used to hearing a cathedral-style service every Sunday. The Croydon church used the opportunity to focus on the second advent of Christ and the benefits of Sabbath rest. The program also featured musical performances from the church's gospel choir, who sang the early Adventist hymn, "How Far From Home." Kirsten Oster-Lundqvist, Communication Director for the Adventist Church in South England, said it was wonderful to be able to share not just a message of hope, but to share it with such a high degree of professionalism and vigor.
Starting next week, viewers of the official broadcast network of the Seventh-day Adventist Church will have a chance to see the humans behind humanitarian work in a new television program. A Closer Walk is a documentary series produced by the Adventist Development and Relief Agency that examines the work of the agency in various locations throughout the world. The weekly series will start airing on Hope Channel on January 23 and will run for 9 weeks. For more information, Visit hopetv.org.
An Adventist publishing house recently transformed an empty street in Serbia's capital into a community outreach exhibit. Volunteers for the Open Heart Street initiative braved frigid weather in Belgrade to distribute thousands of materials from the Preporod publishing house. More than 25,000 books and DVDs that discussed health, prophecy, and the gospel were distributed to community members. The Open Heart Street also served as a donation collection center for the needs of a safe house for women and children in the region.
Coming up, learn how the 2015 Adventist World Budget will fund mission and administrative support.
My daughter was sick and she had to go to the hospital. And I was still working outside of the home. So my job, they didn't trust me. They felt that I wanted to stay home so bad with my kids that I would lie, or I would, cheat their time in order to be home with my children. And when people don't trust you like that at a job, that just makes you feel like, why should I even be here? So again, I prayed and I asked God to just please help me out of this situation. Please, I know you know the answer. I don't know what else I could do.
Welcome back. And now for more news from our global church community.
A financial officer for the Seventh-day Adventist World Church, Juan Prestal, recently gave an overview of the 2015 General Conference World Budget that will fund mission work and administrative support throughout the world. The budget will allocate $184 million to appropriations for each of the church's world territories, subsidies to institutions and their services, missionaries and employees serving outside of their home territories, and operating costs of the world headquarters building. For more on the budget, visit news.adventist.org.
Thousands had the opportunity to focus on the hope found in Jesus during an evangelistic series that ended this week in the Dominican Republic. Adventist evangelist Mark Finley led the New Year, New Life series that drew more than 14,000 people on a daily basis to the nation's capital. During the 5-day effort, Finley conveyed a message of salvation and reminded attendees to make use of opportunities to be joyous. Finley's wife, Ernestine, also gave presentations that focused on natural remedies to improve health. According to the president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Dominican Republic, the series was the highest attended Adventist evangelistic campaign the nation has seen in 15 years. The program was also live streamed and watched by small groups in their churches and homes.
An Adventist humanitarian agency in Canada was recently awarded $1 million to aid their relief efforts for refugees in Iraq. The grant was given to ADRA Canada as a result of the nation's commitment to increase assistance for Iraqis who have been affected by regional conflicts. Starting this week, ADRA will use the funds to provide urgently needed winter items to 25,000 people in northern Iraq.
A 2-day ice storm recently caused more than $200,000 worth of damage to an Adventist-owned camp in Canada's British Columbia province. Leaders of Camp Hope said no one was hurt and the buildings only suffered minimal damage. According to the Adventist Review, the storm broke stained glass windows, damaged cabin roofs, and 40 power line poles, which will need to be replaced. Due to the loss of electricity, the camp had to throw away more than $3,000 worth of food. Camp leaders said workers and volunteers are still in the process of assessing the damage and cleaning up the campgrounds.
The Health Ministries Department of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Korea recently sponsored a vegetarian cooking contest that represented various regions of the nation. The contest, which was the first of its kind, had teams from the church's 8 territories in the country. The goal of the contest was to showcase recipes and ingredients that reflect the church's health message. Each team had 100 minutes to cook their healthiest and most creative dishes, which could also be easy enough for families to make at home. Organizers believe the contest was a good opportunity to represent vegetarian dishes to people who aren't familiar with the diet.
As the denomination's 10 Days of Prayer campaign comes to a close, the Church's Ministerial Association wants to hear how God moved in your life as a result of the season of prayer. If you have testimonies that you want to share, please email them to 10daysofprayer@ministerialassociation.org. If you wish to continue to participate in a community of prayer, feel free to submit prayer requests at 10daysofprayer.org.
And finally, in the news this week, we would like to present our first installment of a periodic commentary on current events. This week, Garrett Caldwell, Public Relations Director for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, shares reflections in light of the recent terrorist attack in Paris, the massive killings in Nigeria, and the ongoing unrest in Syria.
You may be familiar with the old philosophical question, if a tree falls in the forest but there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? It is the kind of question that has sparked deep thought, if not debate, over the relationship between sensory perception and reality. The question that I have sounds similar, but because of the serious nature of the subject, I hope that it sparks more than mere reflection. The question is this: if a drop of blood falls to the ground, blood shed by senseless violence, or worse yet, religiously inspired hatred, but there are no cameras and reporters there to report it, does it mean that the life has no value? If you're offended by the question, well, at least I know you're listening. You see, we live in a world where there is as much competition for our emotions as there is for our attention. Just as the 20th century began in the hum of the industrial economy and ended in the glow of the information age, keen observers have already marked the 21st century as the age of the attention economy. Knowing that we're already overwhelmed by the number of devices and gadgets and streams and outlets vying for our attention, the smartest storytellers understand that capturing our attention alone isn't good enough. The important stories hold our attention, and they do so by moving us, by stirring our emotions, by making us care. Our emotions then have become a commodity, a valuable one, but a commodity nonetheless. And like other precious resources, there's only so much to go around. The kidnapping of more than 200 schoolgirls in Nigeria moved the world. We learned the story of a community that lived under the oppressively violent group Boko Haram, and voices around the world joined Nigerians in the cry to bring back our girls. The world recoiled in horror as ISIS operatives executed innocent humanitarians, journalists, and others by beheading them on camera. More recently, cameras captured the violent assault on the French magazine Charlie Hebdo, and more than 1 million French citizens marched in the street in an act of defiance against those who would silence freedom of speech with fear. Many people around the world have taken up the cry, "Je suis Charlie," as a way to show support for the French. In the meantime, violent tragedies seem to multiply on the global stage more rapidly than news cameras can capture them or than social media campaigns can advocate for them. Nearly 200,000 have been killed in the civil war in Syria. Almost 9,000 of them have not reached adulthood. This week alone, 2,000 were killed in a Nigerian village, and we've learned that 10-year-old children were used as human bombs. Unfortunately, you know that I could go on. It isn't that these things necessarily go unreported. It just seems that they happen with greater frequency than our emotions can process, or our attention can attend. So perhaps my question isn't so outlandish. If blood falls to the ground, but there's no one there to report it, no global social response to it, does it mean that the life has no value? I'm here to say no. Every life has value. If the value can't be measured by the number of those who march or mourn or who are moved to make a hashtag on its behalf, it can ultimately be measured by the fact that the originator of all life on our planet is the witness to every drop of blood that falls to the ground. Just as the Creator bore witness to the first drop of blood shed in hatred and anger, over a religious dispute, mind you, there's never been a drop shed since that has escaped the watchful eye of God. For those of us who have come to love God deeply and have determined to love what God loves, we too must be witnesses to each drop that cries out from the ground, and we must pray, Lord, come quickly.
We'll be back after the break with our weekly features.
Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather all the Jews who are in Susa together, and pray and fast for me. Do not eat or drink anything for 3 days and nights. I and my maidens will fast as you do. After that, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Welcome back. Nancy Kite shares a preview of the latest edition of Mission 360 magazine.
When my friend Ann went to visit her cousin's family, she was ushered into Alex's bedroom. He's 8 years old and sports are his life. Everything in the room screamed sports. His bedspread, the curtains, the carpet, all the ribbons and certificates he had. One wall was covered with ribbons and awards that he had won in his sports events. And so as he was describing each item, Anne began to notice that most of the items that he had won were third place events, maybe just participation or second place events, but nothing for first place. And she did notice one huge trophy, and she asked him about that. And he said, well, that's the best part. I got that because I'm the chief equipment chief for the baseball team. So he was excited because his job was to get the bats and the balls and everything ready for the baseball players. But Anne thought about this for a second and she said, but Alex, don't you wish that you could play on the team? And he said in surprise, but I am on the team. I'm the chief equipment chief, and that's a really important job. And I have to agree, it is an important job. I like the fact that Alex feels part of the team. When we look at our office at Adventist Mission, we like to think of all of us, far beyond our office, are part of the mission team. And if you'd like to feel part of the team with us, please visit our website at adventistmission.org. Click on the magazine section for Mission 360, and you'll find all kinds of stories that will help you feel connected and as though you are part of this mission team with us.
For this week's Tech Corner, Kim Peckham discusses a new app for children that brings Bible stories to life.
Do you remember My Bible Friends? This set of children's books first appeared in 1963. They were written in a charming, simple way, but then they added realistic, high-quality art that even adults could appreciate. The set proved to be a big hit with young families.
So we wondered, how do you take something that is already great, that is loved by generations of Christians, and make it better? Well, we tried taking away something old and then adding something new. Basically, we took away the ink and paper. That released us from the limitations of dyes and poor reflected light. Now the digitized art appears on your iPad in this ultra high resolution and with backlit colors that are bright and vibrant. Technology makes the artwork more brilliant, but it also lets us add a whole new layer of interactivity to the story of Noah. Now each page is a place where children can explore and find these little surprises.
They discover animals that react to their touch. And people, too. The My Bible Friend set has helped generations of preschoolers learn how to read. The app adds something extra. Now, children can follow the highlighted words as the story is read aloud.
In the beginning, when God looked at the earth he had made, behold, it was good, very good.
Or children can turn the soundtrack off and read to themselves. Of course, the story is true to the Bible, the new Noah and the Flood app. It's something old, something new, and wonderfully true.
And now it's time for your weekly social media report with Angela Taipei. This week, find out how you can use Facebook and Twitter to keep up with information for the upcoming General Conference session.
Whether you'll be there in person or joining from far away, the 60th General Conference session will be an opportunity for members to worship together as a worldwide family and move forward together as we focus on God's work. Even if you are unable to travel this July 2 through 11 to San Antonio in the U.S. state of Texas, that doesn't mean you can't be involved from wherever you are, even starting now. Find information about session on Facebook at facebook.com/GC Session. You can also follow us on Twitter at the handle GC Session. Log on and let us know if we'll be seeing you there or from where you'll be joining us. The Adventist News Network will be covering the event as it happens, but between now and then, you'll also find your questions about session answered in episodes of ANN Video, along with additional information about what will be taking place during these meetings. If you miss an episode, you'll be able to find the clip later on the GC Session Facebook account. On these social media pages, during session, you'll be able to find not only news, but also ways to be connected to the event through live prayer with those in the convention center, live webcams, and by sharing your pictures of how you are called to reach out to the world around you. No matter where you are, you'll still be able to join the conversation. On Twitter, you can also see the event through the eyes of those attending in San Antonio by following the hashtag GCSA15. We look forward to connecting you to this significant event.
If someone were to attack your church, school, your hospital, or your building, would you know how to respond? I sat down with Arthur Blincy, who is the Chief Risk Management Officer of Adventist Risk Management, to discuss how you can keep your buildings and personnel safe in case an intruder wants to impose harm. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us.
Julio, I'm glad to be here.
So recently we've seen in the news a lot about the Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris, where terrorists walked into an office and unfortunately shot. Several people died, many were injured. But many of us that work in churches or in schools, in hospitals, think that can't happen to us. Why can this be a dangerous attitude to have?
Well, if the headlines have taught us anything, it must be that we cannot be a people of apathy and think that it can't happen in our facilities. In fact, Julio, in the last 5 years, there's been several incidents of acts of violence at Adventist facilities that have taken the life of Adventist employees, church members around the world on almost every continent, including North America.
So it can happen anywhere,
it can happen anywhere.
To our institutions.
Correct.
So what are your top 3 tips that you would have to ensure that our institutions are safe in this regard?
Well, I think number one, as an institution, our people must be aware of those who are on our premises. You know, we have to be vigilant. If there are people who we don't really know or they are doing something suspicious, we need to report it. And we also need to network with our local first responders so they get to know our facilities and we get to know what will they do if we need to call them to come to an emergency situation at our churches and schools.
So what can individuals do? That's something institutions can do. What can individuals do?
Well, I think the main thing individuals can do is to be sure that they know their local church or their school. When you go to church on Sabbath, do you know 2 ways out? Do you know if an emergency occurred and you had to shelter in place, where you would go? And that requires training of the church pastors, deacons, elders, Sabbath school personnel to help the congregation know where to go in the event of emergency and then practice it in a drill on a Sabbath morning. There's nothing wrong with being prepared at all times.
Arthur, this is extremely helpful and timely information. I myself am reminded now maybe to go, when I go to my church, to be aware of the facility, the exits, where to shelter, etc. So where can people go and find this information?
Well, the best place that we would offer to them is to visit our website at adventistrisk.org and check out the prevention section, where there are specific resources designed for churches, schools, and other facilities.
Now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history. This week, the death of Ellen G. White's grandson, who served as director for the White estate.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. On January 11 in 1881, pioneer evangelist Isaac Sanborn, originally from Wisconsin, organized 16 Sabbath keepers living around Camden in the U.S. state of New Jersey into only the second Adventist local church in that state. The church joined the New England Conference, which at that time had only 505 members. Today there is a New Jersey Conference with just over 15,000 church members. On January 12, 1991, Arthur Lacey White died at the age of 83. One of 7 grandchildren of Ellen White, Arthur served for more than 40 years as secretary, or director as we would say now, of the Ellen G. White estate from 1937 to 1978. For decades, church leaders sought his views on a range of theological issues, and he also played an important role in the establishment of the General Conference archives. White's 6-volume biography of his grandmother, completed and published after he retired, is the most detailed narrative of her life. And on January 14, 1878, the Health and Temperance Missionary School opened in Battle Creek with an initial enrollment of 75 students. An outgrowth of Battle Creek Sanitarium, it was intended to support the health and temperance education work of the church. 25 years later, after it fell under the control of John Harvey Kellogg, the school's objectives were taken over by the College of Medical Evangelists, today's Loma Linda University. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thank you so much for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, join our global conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide through more stories, photos, and videos. Visit Facebook/Adventist News, Twitter/Adventist Church, and Instagram at Adventist Church.
Our good news for this week comes from 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. The passage says, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.